I'm Matthew Marzinski. I'm a program manager at the Hive, and with me, as always, is Sam Albert, who you can see on screen here, and also we have David Boyle joining from the Hive. David is our engineering manager at the Hive, and so we are here today to talk to you about technology furniture. Technology furniture is often overlooked. It's the second part of the conversation after the cool stuff, the cool toys, the technology, the AV hardware, and the experience. But it's really a very important part of delivering that experience. And let me back up just a second and just clarify what I mean by technology furniture. It's really any kind of fixtures or any touch points or any objects in the room that may not necessarily be part of the core technology, but that really serve to light up the core technology. So examples of that might be the different mounting devices for the AV hardware on the wall. It might be the furniture itself that we sit at if it has any kind of connection to the technology, or if its configuration or shape or position helps to light up that technology. So in this slide here, there's a good overview of what I'm talking about. You have everything from the chairs themselves, although we won't be focusing too much on the sitting furniture here, the chairs, the table, the credenza in the back, the way that display is mounted. Those are all a core part of delivering that experience because it helps to configure the room. If you really think of the entire room as a single piece of technology, that's the way that we approach designing our archetypes. We don't really think of a room as an inherited space in which you hang hardware. We really think of it as a dedicated space for delivering a certain experience, and hardware, software, and the physical environment are all part of that. We're going to spend our time today focusing on that. We're going to do this in three parts. We're going to give an overview of some of the manufacturers that we use. It's not, this isn't to try to push any one manufacturer ahead in front of another. This is simply to give examples of some of the technology furniture that we use. Then we're going to pause in the middle, and Sam is going to take us on a little virtual tour of some spaces at Microsoft that we have actually built out to discuss how these spaces look after they're built. And then in the third part, we're going to dive into a little bit of engineering around how we deploy a couple of specific pieces of technology furniture in our room. David's gonna go through some technical discussion around that. One of the things that we've noticed with a lot of our partners is this embrace of the technology furniture in the room as being a core part of the experience. You're looking at the offering from one of our partners, one of our OEM partners here, Salamander. For those of you who have either been at the Hive or seen some of our previous broadcasts before, you know that in our signature room we use this arc-shaped table, and we get asked a lot about where that table comes from. Today we're gonna discuss two manufacturers that happen to produce that table. Salamander is one of them. Steelcase is another one. Here we're focused on Salamander. What Salamander does is they actually offer a modular design tool where that table can be configured anywhere from I think it's anywhere from 2 all the way out to I think 8 or maybe even 10 people. It's made in segments. But one of the things that Salamander has done is they're offering customers a way to configure not just the table itself, but also the credenza at the front of the room that holds the technology, or in some cases, if it's a projection system, it'll hold a short throw projector. You can see that the entire AV cluster is at the front of the room there in relation to that table at the front. One of the things that's really important when you're thinking about furniture is how that technology furniture, how it works together with the particular devices that you're speccing in the room. So as an example, in this configuration here, we've got a Logi Rally bar at the front of the room. That Logi Rally bar has a certain field of view that the table has to play well with. So I believe, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think we've got about 120, 130 degree field of view on the Logi Rally bar, thereabouts.
Yep, that's correct.
Right. So, so one of the reasons that the table is the distance away that it is from the camera and the shape that it is it corresponds to that field of view. That's really important to consider when you're thinking about which devices you're putting into that room. In with certain other devices, we have a wider field of view. So we use the Jabra Panacast 50 in some cases, which has a really super wide field of view. It's about 180 degrees. When we do that, that table can be a lot wider, or the camera can be a lot closer. And so that relationship of the furniture to the performance of the AV hardware is really important to take into account. Sam, you had a big hand in the development of this room and working together with Salamander and with our other partners. Anything else to say about this? And maybe while we do that, we can jump to the next slide, which is a photo of that same room that we're looking at here in the Table Designer.
Yeah, Matthew, thanks. That's it's a good call out. Salamander's been a great partner with us. Looking at it, not Salamander here, but I'll just my last comment on the previous slide with Salamander. There are also other considerations when we're building and designing these spaces. One example with the Salamander room is based on what your room requirements are. You can configure that AV furniture so it could have many roles in the room. It could store your AV components. The model that we were just looking at also helps you deploy that space where you can actually mount a single display, dual display, 21:9 aspect display directly to the furniture itself without having to go into the wall. It could be a completely freestanding device. You can pull off some of the weight requirements on your wall. You could have a full glazing on your front wall as well and have it installed front of room experience. So there are a lot of benefits as well that once we look at some of the projects that we deployed on Microsoft, we can talk through a little bit of the specifics there as well. I'll hand it back to you, Matthew, on this room, on our Legrand room here.
Yeah, Sam, when we were in the early days when we were building out archetypes at the Hive, we were attaching everything to the sheetrock, and the Swiss cheesing of those walls bears the evidence of all of our work there. We do a lot of it, installs and reinstalls at the Hive, so our walls look particularly bad. But that was a good reminder. I recall about a year ago, we were still generally attaching things to walls, and we were only starting about a year ago to experiment with what I call exoskeletons, so these frame mounts that hold everything together. One of the things that strikes me about the way that we do things, where we're moving towards today, is the use of that furniture at the front of the room to really bear all that weight and minimize the amount of damage that you're doing to the walls, but even more importantly, to minimize the amount of reinforcement that you have to do. Those front of room, front wall systems are great for consolidating all your technology into one package, but also speeding up deployments, right? When you don't have to open up the walls, when you don't have to bring in a general contractor to paint, to patch, to pull all new wiring through the walls, when you can actually just build a single setup like that, it really helps to move things along. So what we're looking at here is, I believe this is our Legrand room. This is a slightly different setup here. You can see that credenza in the front there has been replaced by a slightly shallower type of a unit, and in this case we've got a Jupiter 21:9 display, and we've also got a Surface Hub here on a rolling stand to bring in that collaborative element. Any other thoughts to share about this room, Sam? You were involved in the build out of this one.
Similar concepts, a lot of consideration into room size, making sure we meet a lot of ADA requirements around accessibility, especially when I think that's one of the nice things we've seen with some of the new OEMs who are introducing these types of tables. We saw Salamander, which is a pretty modular design. It can get pretty large. Different OEMs have designed different kind of angles to the arc of their table, and that fits well in different size spaces. This table here is 2 modular tables together with 6 seating. That works pretty well as also. we got a lot of comments. You called out, Matthew, on some of the acoustic treatments. Sometimes it is to hide the Swiss cheese that we've put on the walls by mounting and taking things off and on. Sometimes it helps with acoustic treatment, so there is oftentimes purpose to those rooms. And this one in particular, I think, has a pretty cool design. This is another one of the Legrand products, where it adds a little bit of texture to the room as well. It helps frame the display pretty well, and then provides a lot of acoustic properties that just kind of helps make everyone sound real natural and real good in the space.
Yeah. David, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. I know because you've got a whole section at the end here, but since we're looking at this room, can you talk a little bit about the deployment advantages of a space like this, where you've got all of your technology sort of built into this single frame at the front of the room and held together, and then you've got that applied soundproof, or not soundproofing, but acoustic material on the front. In your work building these out at the Hive compared to where we were, say, a year ago when we were more traditionally mounting things to the walls, what advantages have you and your team come to see in using this furniture?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on quite a few of them. The nice thing about the Legrand setup is that they do a very good job at sort of hiding those struts that go all the way down to the floor. In that particular picture, you can see, it's holding a very large Jupiter display. All that weight is transferred to the floor, and as you were saying, it reduces the amount of impact or GC work that you have to do to support that weight by using those floor stands. Then they obstruct that with the credenza, but Legrand does a great job at pass-throughs, and from the integration side, you have plenty of throughway to do wiring. All of that's external to the wall, so they are very mindful about storage of the equipment as well. If you're familiar with the Legrand storage solutions, they use these mounting plates that sort of snap in place, so you can prefab some of these solutions by putting all of your components together and really just snapping them in place. Those are obstructed by the front plates. The two on the outside slide out, and the one in the middle kind of unlatches and pops off entirely. Very mindful storage solutions. The camera is mounted through a mount right below the display. It has varying adjustments if you wanted to use different display solutions as well.
I get a lot of questions about tables, especially that arc table that we use in our medium signature. But you may recall that in some of our smaller rooms we use these guitar pick shaped tables. We've seen a lot of work in the last year and a half or so from different manufacturers responding to our different archetypes. This is part of Steelcase's Ocular collection. They make these 3 tables specifically for Teams Rooms archetypes. And so they've got that arc table that's seating for 7. That's a drop-in solution for any room that uses that configuration that we've got in our medium signature, that configuration where the room is turned widthwise. And then they've got their own version of the guitar pick table. It's not critical that it look exactly like a guitar pick, but they've got these 2 sizes here that put the participants around that white area of the table. And we've got a smaller one that seats about 3. Those are called their coupe tables. And we've installed those around the Hive. Those work really nicely. They've got those cool slots there for the wiring to come up for an MTR on the table. These are very versatile tables, and they kind of strike that balance between a gumdrop table and a guitar pick table. Sam, I know you had a lot of back and forth with Steelcase when they were developing these. Any other things to say about these?
It was a great collaboration with Steelcase on a lot of these projects, especially the first arc table that showed up in some of the very first signature rooms. Between Microsoft Hive, the product group, and Steelcase, I believe that we still have the original ARC table, about the 84 different designs that we iterated through within the Hive in different thicknesses and cardboard and plywood set up. So it was a great experience. We specifically had a chance to review and snap some of the designs to more the common medium conference rooms sizes. But again, it fits really well with that 7 or 8 person seating. And then we love the evolution that's happened with some of the guitar pick that fits really well in some of the small and almost focus room size tables as well. Really, they create really great hybrid experiences in our experience.
Yeah, you can see the application of those tables here. One of the things that I really like about this shape that they came up with is that in some cases we want the table fairly close to the wall, like when you have a Panacast 50 that we use in our small spaces and in our focus spaces, you can really push that table right up against the wall because you've got a 180-degree field of view. But when you want to either put a Surface Hub at the front, so you need a little bit of room at the front to be able to walk in front of the table, or when you have a device that has a narrower field of view, because that table has finished edges all the way around, you can actually pull it out further. So it highlights that relationship between the furniture and the technology and the way that you need to adjust your configuration, your placement, the shape of your furniture based on what technology you've got. So this is a really versatile design. I feel like they've sort of thought through the ability to use this table in multiple settings versus something like a traditional gumdrop table, which has a flat edge at one front and a flat edge at the front, and it's designed to be pushed up against the wall. So that limits you a little bit more in how you can use it. If we go to the next slide here, you can see it actually installed. There's a nice example of how it's installed in what looks like a more corporate finish type of a room. All right, I want to move forward here to the third of our 3 partners. This is a company called Heckler, and they make a lot of the front of room, front wall systems that we install at the Hive and that we deploy throughout Microsoft. This is an example of one of their twin screen wall systems here. It's got a Logi rally bar attached to it, and in this case, they've got these panels on the front, these extra panels on the left and the right. Those look like loudspeakers. They're actually not. The idea there is that you're bringing out that whole wall surface below the screen, bringing it forward to help meet ADA regulations. So normally you would build a credenza or a knee wall there when you have something as deep as that camera bar sticking out. And so what they're doing here is they're providing that extra affordance that normally you would build in, that would be part of your GC works. That's kind of a cool solution there, where the furniture that you're buying to address the technology is automatically addressing some of your ADA needs. David, Sam, any thoughts to share about our friends at Heckler here?
Yeah, Heckler is another great partner that we've had a lot of workshopping and solutioning, and again, we'll have a chance to dive into some of the virtual tours and show examples of rooms on campus. But again, we like the industrial design of some of their approaches in the space, and we'll look again on some of the different options that we're able to deliver and deploy those solutions with.
Heckler's got this neat little solution here. We should be looking at the slide now, where you can actually mount an MTR right to the front wall. We've been experimenting with the idea of taking it off the table in some cases and just putting it straight on the front wall. What's really neat about that is it just takes all your wiring off the table completely and concentrates it on the wall. One of the products that we use a lot is this small AV cabinet, which also functions as a camera bar stand. David's actually going to be going into the engineering of how we outfit and mount that particular product a little bit later in the session here. But right now, what I want to do is I want to turn it over to Sam, and we're going to go on a tour. We're going to go on a virtual tour um, around Microsoft in a couple of rooms that we've built out. We've actually scanned about 20 rooms that we have on campus, so that we can dive into those rooms and zoom and pan around. If any of you have been on Zillow, Redfin, or any of the real estate websites, this is a similar technology that we're using here. So I'm going to hand it over to Sam, and he's going to tour us through a couple of spaces and show us how we're using technology furniture actually at Microsoft. Sam?
Awesome. Thanks, Matthew. So I should be sharing my screen here now. And we're going to jump right in kind of where we took off on the last slide. So this is a very typical room at Microsoft. We have thousands of these, what we would call a small traditional conference room, a 4 foot by 8 foot table in the center of the room. We have a whiteboard. We have about usually it's about 8 to 10 seats. One of our pet peeves, which is a pretty hilarious running joke, is we are constantly asking our facilities team to not drop a chair in the front of the room, directly in front of the camera and the display, but it happens pretty consistently. They usually end up getting shuffled to the side when you join your first meeting of the day. But this is a great example of a room where, really moving forward and deploying at scale some of the principles that we talked through. So here we have one of our heckler boxes at the front. And essentially, we were able to more or less reduce a lot of the infrastructure demands of this room. So we have all the components inside this AV box. Our camera is sitting on top of the box. We have direct connections to our display. So nothing is going in the wall. Really, the only infrastructures that will deploy in a room like this would be bringing our category cable, our CAT cable, to the table for the controller. And also if we're wiring something like a whiteboard camera as well. Again, a super clean install. When we're talking through ADA, all of our new design standards at Microsoft now all meet ADA requirements. So in a solution like this, nothing is protruding essentially from the wall beyond those that, depending on your geographical location, of course. A lot of our guidance is around about 4 inches. So we're using a Samsung display with an ultra thin chief mount, keeping everything within that 4 inches. With these AV boxes, the same thing. Nothing is protruding from the wall too far. It's a very clean design that works really well. Very easy to deploy at scale. Calling out kind of just a principle that we've covered a lot in Hive Live 101 as well. We really do like to separate a lot of our AV components from the rest of the furniture. And you can see when we go from our small traditional room, where we've got a display, traditional table, to something like our small signature room, for example. This is another room we have on campus. Looking around a room like this, the signature experience with some of our guitar pick tables, this is a steel case guitar pick table at the front and a steel case standing table in the back of the room, really creates a great meeting dynamic. You can focus at the front. We have a lot of flexibility in the back of the room. But you'll notice that it's the exact same AV layout that the room we had before. A couple callouts, in this room was already wired for projection, so we have that set up. But with the heckler box in the front of the room, we have all of our components. We don't have anything tied to the furniture or infrastructure of the room. Doesn't matter what table you have, it works pretty well in a space like this. So this is another example of that heckler box. We have, again, in rooms especially with projection, we love to kind of surround the front of room with some acoustic treatment. Really helps with the acoustic properties of the room, making it sound great. And then this kind of helps just provide a more interesting dynamic to the space. Looking at slightly different room layouts, something like our collaborative spaces. This is one of my favorite rooms on campus, actually. We took the scan of this room right before we upgraded this from the Surface Hub 2 to the Surface Hub 3 that's there now, but still the exact same layout. It's open collaborative. We've got different working modes. So in the front of the room, it's pretty open and pretty casual. So you could either be sitting. These chairs are really easy to move around as well in the space. If you're doing some really collaborative work with remote participants. We have our Surface Hub. The new Surface Hub 3 is driving an MTR experience, so everything you need is at the front of the screen. We don't have any other controllers or boxes in the room. Everything is done at the front of room display. This room is outfitted with the Surface Hub 3 camera, but also to provide great audio and great audio lift in the room, we do have the Biamp ABC audio bar as well. That just helps provide a little extra coverage in the room. Really helps, just make sure everyone is heard and can be heard and hear when remote participants are talking. But this layout, again, this is a lot of components in this room are from one of our partners that we talked through this morning. So this would be part of the Legrand family of tables as well. So this is Middle Atlantic ARC table. It's a 3-person table at a bar height, so it's a little higher. It lets you kind of give you a little bit of view ahead at the room below. And then this also is an ADA compliant mount. You happen to see the remote for the mount on the table here, but the entire display will lift up and down for ADA requirements. So that's super convenient. It brings all of the AV bar, the camera with it, as well as it goes up and down. And then there is a little bit of storage inside of this this chief mount here as well, just for all the power plugs and extra components. And helps keep a really clean install in the room. A similar layout, we were talking about some of the steel case tables. This is a great example of one of their coupe style tables. So this is a 5-person table in a room. Again, Matthew kind of talked about being very considerate around layout and how close we are to the screen. Here we have our steel case mount for the Surface Hub as well, but we're creating enough of a gap in the front of the room so that if you do want to go up and collaborate, work at the whiteboard, you've got a lot of space for this. One of the nice things that we like about the Steelcase tables, again, besides just the aesthetics, they are one of the more beautiful products we think on the market today for these types of rooms. They also really thought through a lot of the AV storage components as well. In a room like this that's being driven from the Surface Hub, you don't have a lot of extra components, but we do still have a couple of plugs. This room, we just have a speaker puck on the table. We've had a lot of great success. I think this room has actually since been updated since we took these virtual scans. This is one of our early pilot rooms. So we have one of the Yealink Smart Vision 60s, that round table camera on this table. And again, the way the table design accommodates accessories, it was really easy to come in and install. We've got power underneath the table. There's a lot of room for storage underneath as well. I'm trying to get a good angle from my virtual scan here, but you might not be able to see too much under the table. But again, this is another great collaborative space.
Oh, while you've got this view here, I'm sorry to interrupt you. One of the things I wanted to point out that's really nice about what they've done here with this table is you see that stripe at the front of the table there. That's a contrasting material there. What that does is it helps to reinforce visually that you've got an area for working there at the front with the Surface Hub. So if you're standing there, you can reach behind you. You sort of got a ledge where you can put down documents or markers or whatever. So it creates this sort of two-zone area. It's a really nice example of how choosing the right furniture actually helps to reinforce how the room can be used.
Totally agree, Matthew. But also, as you were talking, I was able to spin the room around. And another important consideration that we've started to include, again, in partnership with our facilities team, we like to have a lot of glass and openness in our spaces. It helps kind of make the room feel a little less stuffy. But one thing that we've learned pretty quickly as we're starting to deploy a lot more intelligent cameras in our spaces, those intelligent cameras, if you're in the room or you are walking by a glass wall, oftentimes they'll try to pick up those people. So what we're doing a lot of time, again, to keep the glass and keep some of the light pass through, we will start using some of these different features that, again, allows light to pass, but still provides some privacy for the room and also helps our intelligent cameras perform better as well. We're not getting interrupted or it's not getting confused by people who are just walking by in the hallway. So another good call out when we're thinking through, non-AV components of the room that really do make a big difference in the experience. As we kind of move up in size, when we're looking at our medium traditional rooms, here's just another example of that heckler box in the front of room. This is with our Logi bar and a nice big 21:9 display. We have all of our AV components stored in that front box as well. And then another example of another medium room. Again, our medium rooms are about this 12 to 16 or maybe even 18 seats in that table. This is an example. We put in this is a large single display canvas in a room of this size, but this happens to be, I'm not sure if you can tell, this is a really big display. That's a 98-inch display. We're really looking at exploring different experiences between, dual displays and single canvases. Sometimes the dual displays, especially if you're going to 75 or 85-inch displays where it's creating a really, really wide canvas, we've had some feedback in rooms, especially of the size. If you're going that dual display, sometimes you just, if you're sitting at the front 4 seats of this table, and you've got content on a dual display, that really creates a pretty wide front of room experience. And sometimes that content ends up practically being behind your head. As we're seeing prices come down pretty drastically on some of these larger displays. So this is another Samsung 98-inch display. there is we're starting to take weight into consideration. David had called out some of the components we're using, some of these mounts in the front of room. These heckler displays have the kind of those exoskeleton properties where a lot of the weight is getting distributed off of the wall and pushed down into the floor. Again, with these designs, it's practically not noticeable. We're able to use these mounting posts to help run some of our cables between the display and the storage compartment as well. So it creates a lot of flexibility that way. In a room like this, again, in these medium rooms, this is part of our spaces. Again, just based on timing, we have then since installed some of our a site camera in this room as well from Logitech. Another great experience in this space with this layout. Excuse me. Going from our traditional to our medium signature rooms, we've looked at our Legrand room here. This is another virtual component. Matthew had called out some of the acoustic panel on the front for privacy. So those are also important considerations, knowing what kind of views your cameras are going to get for people who are in the room. Another great project. This room gets a lot of compliments on how great of an experience it is, creating this arc table with another 21:9 aspect display on the front. The camera does a really great job in this room of capturing everyone. Jumping ahead to another example of that same signature room, medium signature room, where we flipped the orientation. This room was a little bit bigger. So instead of a 6-person table from Legrand that we saw previously, this is one of the very first Salamander designs with the arc table. This gets us 8 seats. I think there's 3 components to this. And we had mentioned by designing and bringing the Salamander front credenza, everything is mounted to that credenza. There's no weight, there's nothing mounted to the wall at all. It is completely freestanding. So that was a great implementation of this for this room, especially when we're looking at some of these larger displays that have a lot more weight. Also, the way that this room was designed with this display, the credenza also meets all of our ADA requirements as well. So another great implementation. And they happen to look really great and sleek in a room. We have a lot of executives who like this layout. Again, because of the way this room has been laid out, we're powering this entire room essentially with the Jabra P50 in the room. And it's doing all the work, captures great audio, great video for participants. So another great example of those medium signature rooms. And because this was a retrofit, the room previously was designed to be kind of front of room AV here that we flipped the orientation. Another consideration when we're looking at infrastructure, this is a Connect Track product that essentially brings any cabling from the front of room where there was a lot of connections, our network, powers at the front as well. Things we need at the table, so power, we're bringing our category cable for the front of room touch panel. Instead of having to re-drill or install cores, these Connect Tracks are really great products. They've got different variations of going under carpet with a little carpet bump, again, ADA compliant, or going right over top of the carpet in this example. Another great way to help streamline and make your designs easier to deploy. One of our OG rooms, if you've been on any of our Hive Lives, this is just another example. We love the projection in some of these rooms. This is a daylight ALR screen. So even though the room has a lot of light, the picture is going to really pop in this room. We've got a high projector. This is, we looked at the Jupiter 105-inch display in the previous 2 rooms. This is about a 140-inch display, so it really creates a very immersive lifelike experience. We talk a lot about some of the projection, the high-resolution, high-brightness projectors we're using in these spaces, and this is one of the nice steel case 7-person tables, one of the original partners that we brought these designs to life in these spaces. So another great example of a really beautiful hybrid-friendly room. I've got about 1 more minute left here. Really the last call out, some of the products we've seen before in different implementations. I'll go through these very quickly. Here's another great example of the heckler with a dual monitor installed at the front of room. Again, leveraging the exoskeleton components to take all the weight off of that front wall. This is a room that works great with dual displays. Same idea in a large conference room with something at the front of room where we've got here's our poly camera in the front with a heckler box as well. And this room happens to be wired for projection, works really well in this space, helps us take all the components. We've got biamp components in there as well. And then a last example of a pretty unique space we have on campus here. this is a challenging room for us where we've got full glass on the front, where we're looking at a product here where essentially, again, meets ADA codes. We've got a beautiful drop down. This is a sightline screen from daylight, so it's got a very interesting aesthetic where it feels like it's practically floating on that front wall. You can't even see the cables coming down. And then for us to be creative around how we mount that camera in front of a room, traditionally these rooms would have had a camera maybe top corner. And we get so much feedback around how brutal those views are for remote participants, where you're just kind of looking top down on that corner. But getting a camera in a great location in front of a room where you can really, look down the camera and leverage some of the AI in those cameras, bringing in with a mount that kind of sits sleek, where even when the screen is up and the Teams experience isn't lit up, it's not blocking too much of that view. So these are, a really quick sprint across a lot of different room types that we have deployed at Microsoft. A lot of the products, we went through 3 or 4 different OEM partners. That's just a snippet. We get to see a lot of really great products from a lot of different OEMs. The snapshot that we provided, I think, was just some of the thought process that we had when we're thinking through how we deploy these spaces. So hopefully that wasn't too much of a sprint. I think I might have gone a couple of minutes over my allocated time, Matthew, but I'll hand it back to you to keep us rolling here.
Well, it reinforces how much there is to talk about here. It's I think we sometimes underestimate the amount of work that goes into choices and the options around technology furniture. So all good stuff, Sam. Thank you.
Our Microsoft Teams Rooms partners, the MRPPs, are there to help ideate and work with you on building out those rooms. So those special configurations where you're like, I have a window here, or my room points right into the public space, or whatever considerations you have. That's where MRPPs take kind of the goodness of the technology, the furniture, and the design, and they kind of bring it all together and help you come up with the right solution. So at the end, we'll be sharing some more links about that. But if you're not already engaged with one of the MRPP partners, this might be your kind of nudge to get started there. So I saw some of the comments come through about working directly with the manufacturers, which is great as well. But just knowing that an MRPP partner is going to look at the room holistically and really think through all of those components. That's like their specialty, is designing the right meeting spaces for you.